Hello? Hello? Hello, guys. How are we?
Good.
Good. All right. In the absence of both the chair and the vice chair, I'm sorry for my tardiness. I will open the meeting at 5:06. And we will begin the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Oh, I am so sorry. Car should be at the house, babe. Well, no, Dad, just drop me off. I can get back to the house now. Okay, love you, bye.
That's pretty funny. Like you answered it, like.
That's my life, right there. It's my life. They need to have very distinct mom ringtones too. That was the youngest. Okay, so sorry about that.
That's all right, that was funny.
We don't have any adjustments to the agenda, right?
No, we do not.
Perfect. No public to speak. Is there? No. And review of the minutes from the May 4th.
I was there, I moved to approve, I think they were fine.
Perfect. And I will second. As long as nobody's opposed to, well, I'm not the chair or the vice chair, so it doesn't really matter, does it? All those in favor? Perfect. Thank you. Lee, you voted for him, right? Did you have a chance to review them?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I know you weren't even intended.
No, I trust you.
No correspondence?
We have no official correspondence. You did request the zoning map, which I have provided.
Perfect.
Also, you were asking about the properties that are second homeowners. We have approximately 2,100 properties with livable space. Those are addresses that have a 911 address, which means there is a building on it. Of those, approximately 950 of those have mailing addresses here in town, which implies that those are people that live in town. That leaves you a little over 1,000 that are second homeowners.
Okay. That's a good statistic to know.
Not really correspondence, but
Nope, that's perfect. Thank you. All right, and now to continuing business.
I went ahead and took the initiative and put this into town ordinance format.
See that? Thank you. Okay. I'm so sorry, I'm drawing a complete, but this is after the adjustments or the suggestions that were made. at the
So
last
everything
meeting,
that's
right?
on there, I typed it exactly as, and then made the adjustments in red. There are a few changes, some shortening, some questions that were brought up. So you'll see there's some notations in red as well.
Okay.
That's right. Okay, that was good, I like that. I like you added, we reworded the life safety stuff, which I think is better, so. That was one of the things I had starred, so that was good.
There is a notation under definitions. I will send the IRC building code subsection for that definition of a bedroom. It was suggested by the code enforcement officer that might be changed to dwelling room
I think
rather
that's,
than bedroom.
I know, but that's really not as clear as far as people go, especially if you're gonna say 2 people per bedroom plus 2 people, you know what I mean?
Understandable, but the issue becomes that minimum of 70 square feet.
That's pulled from building code.
That was what I had a question about, and she did look it up. It's more to it than just that 70 feet or 70 square feet.
So what's the state?
I will
110.
forward all of that to you guys because I have it in an email. And that way you guys can review it yourselves,
I
and
think the,
decide how you want
I
to
think the
work
state
with
is
that.
110.
That way you guys can work it on your own.
So can I ask questions? Obviously, I'm new here and I'm sorry, they're probably gonna be stupid questions and things that we've talked about over and over again.
No such thing as stupid.
So what, is there a goal here? Are we trying to achieve a goal with Airbnb? Are we trying to achieve a goal of restriction or compliance or registration, or what's the end goal? Is it hurting? Is it helping the town? What's,
Okay, my goal, because I live in the Highlands and we've had some problems with these Airbnb
Yes.
people. So my goal is information gathering for the town. So you know who owns the property and who's supposed to be responsible. So if there's a problem with the short-term rental, you have somebody to call, not just looking up who owns the lot and then trying to contact somebody that never answers. And you only have a mailing address, you know? So it's information gathering, so we know who these people are. And then, the penalty and registration is such that you want people to register, so you know who they are.
Yep.
And then the penalty be enforceable such that like each day they don't do what they're supposed to do, they basically give up their rental fee. So it's like $250 per day, which is most places, whatever they're renting for, it's gonna get at least that much. So it would encourage people to comply.
which the compliance would be basically registering, paying your fees and.
Not cleaning up garbage. I mean, it's pretty minimal.
Right.
Safe, life safety, and
Right.
keep picking up your garbage, so that, you know, noise and things like that. So it's really just, it's more information gathering for the town and police. to
So
be able to
has the
call.
people that do the majority of the Airbnb stuff, like the rental companies, have they been in to speak at all, or?
Not yet, because this is at its infancy.
Right.
And the big companies are actually excluded from this. If they're a rental
If you have
company,
more than a
Right.
certain number of, yes.
it's more for the
But they did
individual.
write, they wrote a letter, right?
Yes, and that's what we
Say-
based the start
right,
on,
right.
yes.
So, and again, this is new to me, but the reason I came here was as an employer of a growing company, because of today's economy the way it is and the desire of people wanting to come to Rangeley, we are hiring people from away that would like to come here and live. The
Right.
problem we have now is that the long-term rentals are really, they don't exist. And the ones that do are anywhere from $1,500 a month to $2,800 a month. I don't have a problem with the Airbnb market, that's fine. My goal would be to, I don't think we need 1,000 of them, but that's up to whatever. I'm not gonna tell anybody what to do with their property. My goal would be to take some of those Airbnbs that really aren't doing a ton of business and maybe give them some incentive to be in the long-term rental business.
That's what I was thinking, but these guys said couldn't really do that
No, and it's not, it's just an
We
incentive.
can't do it within an ordinance.
within an
Right.
ordinance.
No, we can't force people to use their private properties. for-
No, but I
Exactly.
mean,
My argument, and I'll still stand on the same thing,
Mhm.
if we regulate the area in which it's done, and we say you can't have a short-term rental in your downtown and your village, then that opens up your downtown and your village to long-term renters.
And that would
Which was
make
language
sense.
I wanted to include, and it was the only way I could see that we could attempt to hit both at the same time.
Well, I guess my question is, in the downtown, whatever area, how many possible things that aren't already rented are you actually freeing up? I mean, most of the downtown commercial is downtown commercial. I mean, there is
Well,
some,
not necessarily downtown commercial, so I do apologize if I use that language. I meant village and residential. I see villages and residential as what should be your working population and your residential population.
Yeah, so that makes sense. So, but we won't know exactly how many of those units there are inside of that unit until we enact this, which would hopefully get those people to register. And then we would be able to say, okay, there is 100
Yes.
inside that area
Mhm.
that we could curb, which is kind of mean to do that, but what about incentivizing long-term rental? Can we do a tax incentive for somebody that has a 3-bedroom apartment building or a 3-apartment building, some type of tax incentive that would encourage them? Because I've done a ton of research on this, and you can make $20,000 to $35,000 a year on an Airbnb. If I, as an employer, am paying you $1,500 a month, obviously that's $18,000 a year roughly after taxes. And if we gave them some tax incentive, if you do the math, your property gets abused less in a sense. You have a stable income, and there's got to be a bunch of people out there that weigh this option all the time. And I think once the Airbnb buzz kind of wears off, I think we'll find more people will go back to that long-term rental. But I talked to a gal the other day about her place was just recently purchased in a local subdivision. It went on the Airbnb market the day it sold, and her long-term rental price was $2,800 a month, because that's what she figured she would be losing. We can't afford that. The employees can't afford that. So somehow I have got to try to come up with a solution for some long-term rentals, because not just vacationers want to come here and live. We need those people that,
or the vacationers can't get their services.
well, then that's the other thing. Go to a restaurant and try to get a meal on Saturday. That's suffering us a little bit, I think, because those people are only going to vacation here a couple of times and realize that we can't even get a burger on a plate in less than an hour before they go somewhere else. So I don't know how to do it. I'm excited about it because I want to be a part of it.
I don't know that it can be done at this level.
No.
I don't know that this is the right arena for that.
Right.
I know that the Board of Selectmen are not blind to the issue and are looking at what may be, we've had some communications with a company that's trying to put in affordable housing. It's such a huge problem, and it's been an existing problem for 10+ years. It's got nothing to do with short-term rentals. Linking the two does nobody any good. They are not one and the same. They do not cause each other grief or heartache. But we are well aware that there is an issue in town. Unfortunately, I don't know that ordinance is anything that we can force upon making them make it a long-term rental.
Right.
Unfortunately, I think that's where we are.
So maybe maybe the only way is to restrict certain areas.
Well, see, I don't think you can really restrict it, because you don't, I mean, first of all, we're only doing Rangeley. So we're not doing any of the plantations.
Well, yeah, that's another one.
So that's the whole other thing. But I feel like, a lot of people have bought their property for the purpose of doing short-term rentals. And, this is the first time we're gonna have a registration for it. So how would you know that they've, been doing it? So I sort of think we should just not limit the number. We want to gather the information, see what's out there, get the information, get the safety information to the, fire department and the police department, and make sure things, doing that kind of safety regulation and information gathering, having some fees to maybe deal with some of that stuff. But I think, I don't like because originally this came in with 300, and it's like, where'd they get that number from?
That's way low.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that should be. I think we'd rather, and especially if you're gonna have
Oh,
The
you
people
need-
got it the first time get to renew first, because then a whole bunch of people are gonna be doing it anyway, and they're still not registering, and we don't know about them.
How many,
Given the statistics that Marty just gave us.
Right,
That's 1,000,
if they're all doing it.
if
which
we
they're not.
take that, well, they're all second homeowners.
Yeah, but they are.
Those are the ones who do short-term, so there's
Right.
potential
There's
for
potential.
1,000 properties.
Right,
To want to do short-term rentals, because they use their properties in seasons.
right,
That's why people do short-term rentals,
I
because
know.
they want to use it all winter, or they want to use it all summer,
Yeah.
but they don't want it to sit vacant, and they might as well make some return on their investment in
until
the
they have a
area.
bad renter. In which case they never do it again.
In
So-
which case, if it's regulated and run by a management company, they don't have to worry about it.
Right, right. So I guess, I mean, but I just feel like we need to gather the information. And if they're all being taken care of by a lot of them are being taken care of the registration, the rental companies. So how many do the rental companies have of that 1,000? How many do they have? You know?
Can we get that information?
I know that Morton and Furbridge Vacation Rentals manages 295 right now.
So that seems
And
like,
that's just one rental company.
That's
They're
one
not-
rental
yeah,
company, and there are 3 in town.
Okay,
so worst case scenario, you've got times 3, right? You've got roughly 885, right?
and then, so another 300 lose,
That's
ought
better
to be
than,
fine. But
that's
I,
better than 1,895, right?
Right.
So what are some of the compliance ideas? Paying a registration fees, one.
mhm,
I think proof of rental insurance, does Morton and Furbridge require proof of rental insurance? I think you would find that if some of these people had to put their, so as a builder, I can tell you, when we build, there's 2 different codes. There's a residential code and there's a rental code and commercial codes are 3, but the rental, the railings on your rental property have to be taller than the railings on the residential. So if you make these people, which they should have renters insurance anyways, that alone would take out 10% of them, because they're gonna talk it over with the other owners and say, you know what, it's not worth it, let's put it.
I gotta modify enough that it is worth it, I'll go.
So maybe little things like that to make it just a little bit more
Mhm.
undesirable, rather than, hey, I got a room, you can have it for $150 a night. And I mean, it's easy. When we travel.
I do
same thing.
Airbnb when I
Yeah.
travel. I
It's
loved
easy.
it, because you can just stay wherever, close to where you want.
Easy,
You
easy.
get a kitchen.
So you're right, maybe regulation isn't the way, but maybe, I don't know. The downtown area probably should be more for the people that live here, because there are no, I've actually contacted the state about that affordable housing program that they came here and talked about.
Mhm.
Yeah, good luck getting a hold of them. They will not call you back. And we're ready to do that. We are ready, we are able.
I heard somebody is doing
it.
that. Is it Wharton or somebody up behind on Cross Street? They're putting in a bunch of affordable
We're
housing
still in
using
the,
that.
we're still in the planning
Oh,
phase.
so
I
they're
don't know if
not
it's
digging
planning
or anything
phase.
yet? Okay.
Not that I'm aware of, no, because they needed, we needed some additional information from them, and they were talking about funding assistance and
Right, because we could
Tips
get
and-
60,000 per unit. I thought
Yeah.
that's exactly what we needed, somebody to come in and put a bunch of stuff in.
Well, yes and no. So my problem with that is I don't want a 7 or 8-year-old kid to go to the school and somebody say, hey, where do you live? And he tells them, and then that becomes the projects of Rangeley. Do you see what I'm saying?
Oh, that's not, they're coming up with the project. It wasn't cheap. It was just affordable.
My
It was still
goal is always to put those
$280,000
affordable housing in amongst the rest of the community, so that nobody felt like they were from the other side of the tracks,
Mhm.
in a sense, you know? And that would work. We just need,
they were still talking about those being upwards of $200,000.
Yeah, I know.
I
So
mean,
it's
so
not
affordable to who?
It's not cheap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
well, and that's it.
Affordable to who? Because my kids can't ever move back.
Yeah.
Who's defining affordable?
So Franklin County says the mean average of affordable housing is 287.
That's what they said. Yeah.
Mhm.
Which, I don't know where they
So
got that
We
because,
have employees that range from $65,000 to $100,000 a year, employees. And that's gonna be tough for some of them, especially if they're single. Now you add 2 kids to the equation and the mom that stays home, you're in trouble.
Mhm.
So are we saying that we don't want those people in Rangeley in a sense? Is that what we're saying? Because that kind of seems that way, and when we have to pay employees, and I'm fortunate in my businesses because that money just unfortunately gets transferred to the homeowner.
So the building
The
for it,
building,
yeah.
is
My
like
problem is I
the
can't do that.
Right.
I'm a nonprofit. It just,
Well,
just
how does,
throw
you
the
can't
money out
offset
the
it,
door,
right.
just throw
How
the money
does-
out the door.
how does a restaurant, and I'm just going on, but how does a restaurant charge you $13 or $14 for a grilled cheese sandwich and $18 for a beer? They don't before they go out of business, you know what I mean? So I'm fortunate, they're not fortunate, but at the same time, I can tell you, nobody's driving up over that godforsaken hill
Not at $5
on a
a gallon.
snowstorm.
Oh.
Yeah, at the way it is now. I've lost a ton of employees that were from Farmington. It all starts out great when they can drive here on a summer day with the window down. As soon as they get that first 4-inch crappy storm and they get to the S-turns, I lose them.
Unless they were born and raised here.
Unless they were.
And then those are the ones that can't afford to come back up the hill and move back home
So,
next
I
to their
mean-
mother.
I know that's another whole, and I'm working on that, but that's another whole subject, I understand, but it goes back to, there has to be some of these Airbnbs that really don't produce that much money and in the long term would make more money as a long-term rental.
Because there is a lot of cost running an Airbnb. You gotta
Right.
go in and clean them, or pay somebody to go in and clean them and turn them over
And again,
and,
a
you know,
doorknob only has so many turns in it to be that simple. But
Right.
a doorknob only has so many turns in it. A hinge only has so many open and closes in it. The wear and tear on a short-term rental is obviously far greater than a
Mhm.
long-term rental. But how do we incentivize some people to keep their stuff in a long-term rental without telling people what to do with their property? Because that's just not.
no, incentivize, right? They get to choose to do it.
We would almost be interested in finding out how many of the short-term rentals are residents though. Because until, my concern is that this market is driven by people who use the properties part of the year, and that's why they're not in the long-term market.
Right, because,
Gotcha.
I mean,
They bought it so they
So they
could come
could
up
be
here
in
in the
the-
winter. They
right,
bought
right.
it so they could be
Come up.
here in the summer.
Right, so
Yeah.
they can't do a long-term rent.
Right, so they wouldn't be able to be in the long-term market. So that's where, I mean, I know, I can think of 3 off the top of my head right now that live in town and own a second home in town that they
Right.
do short-term, but that's 3.
I mean, now that you put it that way, that's the way I grew up. We lived on Cape Cod in the winter, and we got kicked out before school ended because they rented for the summer, and so we usually lived to somebody's bunkhouse or a cellar for 2 more weeks till school finished, and we came up here, and we ran a short term, we ran the Lakeview cabins or whatever, lived there, and we
so
go back.
in all reality, right now, all we should be focusing on is a registration process so that we can see how many
Collect
of these
information,
units.
that's what I'm saying, collect
And
information.
that's what this is.
Yeah, and that's all it should be for now, because
Yep.
we can't steer the ship if we don't really know what it's loaded with, right?
Right, yeah. And so, yeah, information gathering and like you said, life safety, self-checklist as part of the registration fee, make sure you've got these things.
And this isn't a tablet, this is not set in stone. If this gets rearranged as we go, it's just part of business, right? I mean,
And then,
rewrite contracts as we move along.
Well, this is an ordinance, so what will happen is we'll go through however long it takes us to come up with what we think is a viable document. It will go from us to the legal, then,
Goes to legal, then it will go to the Board of Selectmen. Once the Board of Selectmen either says yes or no, it'll go to public hearing.
and how many of those does
Well,
it need?
let me phrase that, I'm sorry, town meeting, not public hearing, sorry.
And I think that should be
well,
relative.
we'll go through a public hearing before it goes to town meeting.
Right.
So you were right, you know what you were
Thank you.
talking about.
Okay, so but how many public hearings does it need? Just one,
I think there might be 2 kind of written
goes
in.
to like a 2 thing.
2, okay,
Yeah,
and so
I have
it
it.
could possibly be ready for the fall, is what I'm saying, what I'm thinking, for the fall election.
Are you saying for November? No.
Yes,
Oh goodness, for November, absolutely not.
No,
No?
absolutely not. Mm-mm.
Mm-mm.
June is gonna be the earliest
Yeah, June of next year. It'll be
Okay.
next year's annual
Okay.
town meeting.
Okay,
There's no way we could force something like this through,
Mm-mm.
not starting from scratch.
No, and especially my other concern is, you know, that this is your first time kind of seeing the document, getting a feel for it. They don't want any of us to feel like we're rushed through getting, and this
Right.
needs to be a
Right.
viable document.
Right.
Because once it's voted on at town meeting, that's the only way it can be changed.
Right.
Is through town meeting.
Right.
We'll have to go through the amendment process and bring it back up and take it back to town meeting.
I haven't read the whole thing, but it doesn't seem like we're putting any restrictions on anything at this point, right? We're just trying to gather that information, get people to register so that we can get an actual handle on what's out there. And then we can start to steer the vote,
right.
which should be easy. Nobody should have a problem with that.
And I wouldn't think anybody have a problem with gathering the information and with suggestions. I mean, that's what I'm saying. It should, I would feel like without making it look restrictive, everybody says, oh, this is just safety stuff and we're not restricting the number of people or whatever. So it's like, this makes sense. People should pass it and we start getting the handle on how many people are here.
In the
And then you
long
could
term,
also, once you have the people, then you can talk to them because you know who's renting and try to convince them or gather information from them
And then
beyond this.
Lee, I'd almost encourage you to have that tax incentive conversation with the assessor.
Yeah.
And I say assessor because they of course know all of the rules and regulations regarding what kind of tax rates you can and can't give without violating everybody else's.
And what about some of that TIF stuff, especially if it's downtown?
I'm not involved in this, so I can't.
So that's a whole
I'm
government.
staying- I'm
I
staying
I
out of
actually
that.
know a little bit about that.
Oh, you do know? Okay.
Yeah, and
I know nothing
it's-
about it.
It's a lot of work. It's that's a lot of work. That includes lawyers full-time, because you're going after government funding, which you have to prove where all that goes.
Okay, that's
Yeah,
not what I
that's
thought.
not-
That's what I
that's-
thought TIF was. I thought TIF was just not pay, the town doesn't pay into the state, gets to hold the money back and then use it. So I didn't think you actually got money. I thought it was more you're just not paying the state
That
taxes
would
they
be
usually
something
get.
I wasn't familiar, but I know as far as, from the people I've gathered information from, that's money that's available for people like me to build affordable housing.
Or whatever.
It's tax increment financing.
Right.
It is financing available through monies gained by growth for projects.
Right.
Short version, condensed, I think that's the easiest way to.
Yeah, so see, I'm out of the conversation right there. Somebody a lot smarter needs to step in.
I
So,
will look to see when Matt is here next. I
Yeah.
think he's probably gonna be your go-to.
and again, like I said, there's gotta be, and, because obviously that's on my mind, trying to solve that long-term rental problem.
Right.
And, because I talk about it all the time, but if we could just get 10% of those people to realize maybe it's not worth the short-term rental, I can do the long-term rental, maybe it's just a property they inherited or they own, they don't come anymore, we see it all the time,
Mhm.
so.
Rather than selling it to somebody who's gonna Airbnb.
Well, and that's the other problem,
If
is we
you-
look
if
at
you
properties all the
make
time,
it
you see
such
something
that-
for sale and you call about it, and all of a sudden it's $500,000 and you're like, ugh.
Right.
The return on the money is not there, I don't care.
Right.
Anybody that can add and subtract can tell you right now, long-term rental, we've done it. Even if we build them ourselves, our net profit is less than $200 a month on long-term rental. As an employer, you don't look at it that way because you look at the monies that employee actually makes you. But as somebody that owns a restaurant, to build or buy or build their own employee housing, absolutely makes no sense. So it's just a tough nut, really. But no, I think this is a great idea just to get all the information, and then it would be interesting to see if there was 1,000 or if there's actually 800, whatever.
Okay. I think what I'd like to send, because I didn't get to do this, is this article, the 5.6 limits the number of registrations. I would, because I'm against limiting it, I want to gather all the information, I would just strike the whole article about that, because It's like.
Which section is that under?
It's the very end, next to last page.
Okay.
Article 5.6 limits, the total number of registrations shall be limited to 300 per registration cycle. And then that people that renewals get first dibs over a new person.
Well, that would take care of the problem right there, wouldn't it?
Not really, because they just operate under the radar. You wouldn't know about them. You gotta know about them. You gotta gather the information.
I think,
Because you don't know about them now. Why would you know about them if they didn't register?
I think a phone call would give you a pretty accurate number. If Morton Furbis is willing to divulge that information, then why wouldn't everybody?
No, that's not,
have an
this
accurate
is
number?
people who aren't with the register. They're on their own and they list it with Airbnb.
Right.
You wouldn't know about them unless you're going on Airbnb.
I'm
and
sure
searching.
that'll be the case anyways, if you charge people $300, because there's a lot of people who say, I'm not gonna give you $300, I'm just gonna fly.
We're
under
still
the
gonna
radar."
have the ones that choose to fly under the radar,
Right.
regardless of what I mean,
You're gonna get the honest
That's their
ones,
intention.
yeah,
You're
you're
gonna get
just
the
gonna
honest
get the
ones.
honest.
but I guarantee you at least 10% or more are gonna fly under the radar. Because they're just gonna look at that like, well, I'm not giving you $300.
Well, no, it's not, there's no, they didn't pick a registration.
No, but, whatever it is.
I was thinking it was $100 and there was, the penalty would be $250, so.
Maybe at $100 you would get more.
Right.
I think the intent behind the limit though, Val, was to limit how many were out there.
I know.
Was to try and, that was the
I
initial
know,
intent.
I
I
know that's the
certainly
intent, I just
understand.
feel like we really want the information. And maybe at a later point, when after we gather the information, we have the stuff, then you could put the limits on it and restrictions, but you need the information. Because right now,
But it'll be
Why?
June before we can start collecting it. That's what you're saying.
But again, if you're saying in this ordinance that you have everybody come and register, then again, you have to go to public hearing to change this to reduce the number or set a number on how many registrations you can have.
right, we would have to change it, but
They
that's
would
what we're
be
talking
lined
about.
up.
We
They
have to be doing
they would-
something else.
They would be lined up out the door on registration day.
Well, if you did 300, they'd be fighting for kicking each other, trying to get to the front of the
I
line.
think 300, I think 300 is a pretty limited number.
Yeah.
I think we can sustain more than that. I thought it would have been greater than 800, but
And I just think that since this was brought to us by the competition, that they have an incentive to limit their competition. So I didn't think that putting a number on it.
I don't know that it would, because obviously competition's good, so I don't know what the rates are for.
Well, it's
trying to-
competition's good overall, but if you're being competed against, you don't want it. So that's what I mean. That this was brought to us by, like, Morton, not
No,
Morton, or
No, it was brought to you by a concerned group of citizens. Some of them do work for
right,
Morton
Keith
Furbis.
Slash, Morton Furnace, yeah. So, I mean, there's the people that are involved in it. So the point is, yeah, they're not from the company, but they're involved with those people. So they have an incentive to limit competition, and I think
Well,
they should do that.
Yes and no,
But if you look at,
I don't think they would get all 300 of them.
No, they wouldn't get any of them. This is people beyond them.
that's the other piece, it's people beyond them, so it's not a
Right.
matter of limiting competition, it's 300 in addition to what they already carry
Right.
as being exempt from this ordinance.
So there would be some that was exempt from the ordinance.
The
Yeah,
only
all-
ones that are exempt from the ordinance are vacation rental property management companies. And that has a definition of an established business compliant with all state requirements for conducting business in the state of Maine that professionally and responsibly manages property rentals for 15 or more private homeowners. They
Okay,
have
so-
to have 15 or more in their,
So those properties would not be in the Airbnb,
Not being the 300.
would not be in that 300 count.
but they should still pay the registration.
No.
That is certainly something that if you want to see that language and we can discuss.
Right, so if they have, so before Airbnb,
Mhm.
they had short-term rentals, right? They've been doing this for
Ever.
ever.
Well, and here's, Airbnb is just a marketing platform. I know everybody loves to use that word, but what we're discussing is short-term rentals.
Right.
Airbnb is strictly a marketing platform for short-term rentals.
Right.
But that's all any of these are, is short-term rentals.
So is it true or not true, maybe we don't know, if you own an Airbnb property or you Airbnb your property outside of the town that you live in, must have a management company that, in that area, that takes care of that. I think if you look in some of the insurance language, that if I insure my home as an Airbnb and my property, that property, my Airbnb is in California, I need a management company inside that within X amount of miles to take care of that property. I think that's how that reads.
In what? I mean, does Airbnb require that?
Yeah,
I don't think.
I don't know about Airbnb,
That's what I mean.
but I think your insurance company requires that. I would have to look into that. I do know
I
that
certainly
that's
don't, I
out there.
certainly think a lot of the people that use Airbnb are not doing that. That may be their risk, but they're not doing that.
Then who changes the bids? Because if I have an Airbnb company, and if I have an Airbnb house in California, because I already said it, and I turn that, who changes the sheets?
It all depends on which way you currently have it managed. If you have it,
Right, but
if you
somebody-
privately manage it and you've hired a private housekeeper to come in and do it, I know over in the Eustis and Stratton area, my daughter-in-law cleans for multiple
Right.
short-term rentals. She is their housekeeper.
Right, she's their
We-
management.
Have somebody on call 24/7. We have a maintenance department of 4 people who manage any kind of issue that can come up. We have a housekeeping team of 20+ people. We have our own laundry. We, as their management company,
Right.
we take care of all of those things.
But no matter what, somebody has to make the bid, right? Whether you call
You
them a
would think so,
management
yep.
company, whether you call them a management company or you call them
Or a private
a
house.
cleaning lady or a
Yep.
cleaning van.
Mhm.
Somebody has to take care of that property. So in a sense, it's taken care of. I don't, I'm sure we'll figure it out. The neat thing is gonna be looking back in 2 years and saying, oh,
Okay.
we screwed that up. Well, that was the right thing to do. You know?
So, Lee, what I would love to do is, I'm a little concerned that they're not here because they're the ones that we usually schedule the next one around.
So I'm gonna throw this out there. The next meeting would be the day after the town meeting.
Oh, no,
Please
no,
don't
I'm not
ask
doing
me.
that to you.
Thank you. Thank you for not doing that. to me.
When is the town meeting?
14.
14th,
Oh, yeah, no.
and the next ordinance committee meeting would be the 15th. I'm
And
sorry, I should have asked. Can we not do that tomorrow,
We're
please?
not gonna do that.
Okay.
I'm flexible.
So we typically meet first and third Wednesday of every monthly.
Yep.
So if everybody wants to move to the first one in,
We could do the first one in July,
July.
or if you want to go to the to the 4th Wednesday, we could do the 22nd.
could we do the 22nd?
Can I ask you-
There's nothing else scheduled that day that I know of.
Can you throw those 2 dates by the chair and the vice chairs?
I'll send it a group email.
Thank you.
The 27th?
Oh.
That's what you said, of July?
20.
No, no.
No.
The last Wednesday in June or the
June.
first Wednesday in July?
The last Wednesday in June is
22nd.
29th, is July, of June.
Or July's 1st.
I'm looking,
The
maybe look at the wrong calendar.
22nd is the
I can't see the
week
whole calendar.
after.
Maybe time to get my glasses checked again.
22nd is the 4th Wednesday, 29th is the 5th
would be the
Wednesday.
5th Wednesday.
Oh, there's a 5th Wednesday.
That's the 5th Wednesday.
That's why I was suggesting maybe the 22nd. Would still give us 2 in June, and then we could go to the first Wednesday, which would be July 6th.
Would everyone be available for the 22nd?
The
Yeah.
22nd is fine.
Okay, can we throw
I
that?
will offer
Those
those
two.
suggestions, and then we'll see which one sticks.
The 6th, I may.
So,
I will email that out first thing in the morning.
Perfect, I'm sorry, Lee. You
no,
had a
you're
question.
fine. I'm asking questions because I'm late to the party. But, so is there a timeline that we're trying to get this submitted to? Whoever we need to submit it to, the selectmen, the town public hearing?
I would say that this would need to be completed by November-ish, have gone through legal, because legal will take their time. That would put it,
How long will we be?
that would probably put it January.
Mhm.
Do you think it's gonna take us 6 or 8 more meetings to really get this?
I don't think
Yeah.
so.
It may not, it potentially may not, But given that you haven't had the opportunity to review the whole document, I would like for you to, take red, highlight or whatever.
Yep, I will study.
Really
this.
give us your input so
Yep.
that we can make sure everybody feels like they're heard. Did you get the note from Val tonight about the removing the 300? Obviously, because we
I
haven't,
didn't put it as a motion.
yeah, because we haven't voted on it,
Right.
but if we could just keep that in mind for the next
Right.
meeting.
Can we make a motion to
Yeah, we can
remove
make
it?
a motion. We got 3 of us here.
There is 3 of us here.
Can I make a motion to remove the 300 limit on the Airbnb?
And I'll second that. Or not
I
Airbnb,
just think
short-term
it's-
rentals.
I think it's too early to put a number on it.
That's what I think.
Okay, so there was a first and a second. I'm gonna offer discussion. Does that then mean Article 5.6 just needs to be removed in its entirety?
Which is what I suggest, yeah, because it all has to do with limits.
Yes, the whole thing is limits. So if you want to amend your motion to remove the article in its entirety.
I make a motion to remove Article 5.6 limits.
Second.
Perfect, thank you so much. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Sorry, I made a motion on my first meeting.
Yes, good job.
Well, I just don't think it should take that long. I think it's
It's
just,
not that many pages.
I think it's an information gathering that we need to have before we can start to try to limit or do anything.
Was this question about who enforces it put in there by the code enforcement officer? Because I would.
That was actually me.
I would think like most of the other ordinances, other than very specific ones that police officers enforce, that this is a code enforcement officer enforcement thing. That's my thought.
So,
Yeah, we
on,
probably will need to.
I mean,
on that note, I don't disagree. I will say from my end that I believe Bailey is already taxed,
Right. I just
to
think
her
this is
limit.
what to do, yeah.
and she does have a part-time assistant, I understand.
Well, my
How-
question would be is, if we're getting after hour calls, those are gonna go through
Police
department.
Right.
So we would need to,
Alright.
it was just a minute.
We'll be out of your way momentarily. sir.
Oh, okay. I
Um,
was like, what are you doing?
Obviously, the registration list would be given to both the fire department and the police
So your
department.
suggestion would be police department.
My suggestion would be considering the police department.
Okay.
I mean, they're gonna be writing civil violations, and then that would be documentation for us in order to present it to the board of selectmen and say, Mr. Smith has had 3 violations, 3
Okay.
noise violations, 3 over limit violations, whatever. That would be my only
Yeah.
suggestion.
So then that would be the one thing that I
Because
would
during the
want.
day, you're not, code enforcement's gonna go between 9 and 4,
Right.
9 and 4, whatever. They're not gonna see
Any of it.
16 people in a house because they're all gonna be on the truck.
And that's, I know we're running out of time. That would be one reason that I would push for a higher registration fee, is to help us pay for the services that the town's gonna provide to enforce that, right? I mean, we should be compensated.
Well, it's just that's why I said like $100, you multiply that 300, that's $30,000 pounds. That makes
That's
enough.
no, I like the 300 times 1,000.
And
Now
it's
that
90,000,
pays,
that's a
that
lot.
pays for a full-time deputy. You see, I mean, they're making money.
But again, you gotta have a long-term rental for somebody to live in.
I'm working on it. So thank you for letting me in.
Thank you.
So please, Lee, yes, go over that.
Yep.
Mark it up, do whatever, please give us all of your input, and then hopefully at the next meeting, all of us will be here, it may not take us that long. I mean, if we can all get here and we can all look at it together.
What's next on the agenda? After this,
and-
I'm gonna stay and see what
All
I
right.
Wait,
So,
we have
so
to
sorry.
adjourn.
So sorry, yep, we have no new business. We'll be proposing the next meeting dates via the email from Bailey. Bailey, Jesus,
Whoa.
Marty, sorry, honey.
Okay.
We were just talking about Bailey. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Well, big things to you guys.